The one thing that is readily apparent if you've played with a ChatGPT or a Claude or any of the large language models that are out there is they are amazing at leveraging their models, right? Leveraging their data set and their models to respond to text queries, answer questions, give emotional support even. But the one thing that all of these models really struggle with is interacting with the outside world, right? They, by default are insular and only have access to their training data, right? Only have access to their model. Now with retrieval augmented generation, there are aspects to being able to read data sets or alternate data sets and retrieve this additional information, but it's still more of a read or a retrieving, and it's not really acting, right? It's not really taking part in the world around us. And for agents to be able to take part in the world around us and actually deliver the value that so many people are projecting that they will have, they will need to interact with software systems. They may even need to interact with real live or real life, physical objects.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the next episode of our Unlocking SAP BTP podcast. This is the episode 123 and today we have a very awesome guest and topic because we already touched a couple of times on the topic of integration. For example, we made an episode of event-driven architectures and so on, but think about the other big topic in the minds of the people right now. It's AI. We hear AI everywhere. So it's a big hype topic, right? But think about an agent helping you in your day-to-day activities at work. Like, I don't know, finishing a sales order process or refunding some money after business travel or whatever you can imagine. And your agent wasn't able to access all the data. That would be a mess. So today, we're going to talk about why integration is also very crucial and important in an AI scenario. And I'm very happy that today I'm joined by Craig Stasila, Senior Director of Product Marketing at SAP. So please introduce yourself first.
Yeah, hi, Niklas, and hi, everyone. As Niklas said, my name's Craig Stasila. I've been on the product marketing team at SAP for about the last 5 years. But prior to joining SAP in 2015, I spent about 20 years in the SAP ecosystem, almost exclusively in the integration space. I started integrating SAP R3. 31H was the first version I worked on, and I've integrated shop floor automation systems, logistics systems, EDI, banking and financial systems. I've even integrated SAP with a toaster once upon a time. If there's anything that is happening in the integration world, specifically around SAP as well, I've dabbled in it, or I've been involved with it for more than a quarter century now.
Awesome. But now you got me hooked. So you integrated an SAP system to a toaster.
Yeah, it was for a Tekkit or a Sapphire. This was quite a few years ago, and with the company that I was working for at the time, we said we could integrate SAP to anything. So we said, what's the most mundane thing that you could integrate? An SAP at that time it was ECC system to, and we said, I don't know, let's integrate it to a toaster. So we created an integration. To this toaster, we built some electronics to actually control the toaster coming down. I did some ladder logic programming with a PLC. So it was really fun to take this out of the box problem and come up with an innovative solution for it. It was really fun.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun story. But okay, let's get back to our topic then. Thanks for introducing yourself first, of course. And yeah, I already teased it a bit. So right now we're having a big AI hype out there, especially right now in these days, we're talking all over agentic AI, having agents helping us in our day-to-day life and day-to-day routines. And now I would be interested in your opinion why we should first think about integration when thinking on AI agents.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, you know, AI agents are exploding, right? The pace of innovation with respect to AI is something that I have never seen in my entire career in the IT ecosystem. And the one thing that is readily apparent if you've played with a chat gpt or a claude or any of the large language models that are out there is they are amazing at leveraging their models, right? Leveraging their data set and their models to respond to text queries, answer questions, give emotional support, even. But the one thing that all of these models really struggle with is interacting with the outside world, right? They, by default, are insular and only have access to their training data, right? Only have access to their model. Now with retrieval augmented generation, there are aspects to being able to read data sets or alternate data sets and retrieve this additional information. But it's still more of a read or a retrieving, and it's not really acting, right? It's not really taking part in the world around us. And for agents to be able to take part in the world around us and actually deliver the value that so many people are projecting that they will have, they will need to interact with software systems. They may even need to interact with real live or real life, physical objects. And that right now is predominantly going to be handled by APIs, and APIs are completely and totally in the domain of integration, right? So when we think about what an AI agent needs to do in order to be productive, it is going to be interacting with the real world, with IT systems, with business systems, with APIs, and integration is a huge part of that.
How you differentiate agentic AI against a normal chatbot, which is trying to help me on any kind of web page.
Yeah, so I did jump ahead there, and the I would say the biggest difference is with a I was let's take a step back and just talk about the difference between agentic and non-agentic workflows, right? This has nothing to do with AI. This is just talking about the manner of which work happens, like even you or me doing some work, right? So I want you to think about a time when you you had an assignment in maybe primary school, right? You were given an article to read, you were given a book to read, and you had to write a report on that book, right? Do you remember doing something like that?
Yeah, and I hated it.
Well, we do know right now that a lot of students are leveraging AI for that, but one of the problems that they're finding is that if you aren't interacting with that AI tool we'll say in an agentic fashion, you're not getting relatively good results, right? So, like when I would, do a book report when I was, let's say, in grade 3 or grade 4, I would read the book and then I would just write, right? I would start writing and I'd go to the bottom and I'd be done. That is a perfect example of a non-agentic workflow, right? You just start and go. You don't go back. You don't erase, misspelled words or fix your poor grammar. You just kind of do it in one shot. And if you think back to like the Chat GPT 3.5 era, a lot of the LLMs kind of worked in that manner. But now think about like when you were in university, and you had to do a report there or a thesis or something along those lines. My guess is you didn't just start at the top and write to the bottom, right? What were some of the things that you would do, Nicholas, to help write a thesis?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you need to do this block by block, step by step. Then you review parts even further. Then you change it, adjust it, and so on and so forth. And yeah, maybe AI can help on that.
Yeah, and were you just pulling from, your own information, or did you go out and seek additional resources?
Of course, I will search for additional resources and maybe also even in the past some kind of tooling which could support me. I mean, just simple, very basic, the grammar correction feature from
That's
Word,
right.
right? So
Yes. Yeah, and that is, again, more indicative of agentic type of a workflow, right? It is iterative, as you mentioned. It's collaborative, and you said using tools, right? That is in the AI agent space, what we refer to them as well. And it's those tools, it's that iteration, it's building a plan and executing on that plan, right? And it's all in furtherance of a goal, right, where we don't necessarily know how we're going to achieve that goal when we're given it, right? We're given that goal, we don't know exactly all of the steps, right? It's non-deterministic on how we're going to get there, and it's, iterative, it's collaborative, and those are really a lot of the hallmarks of agentic workflow, right? Whether that be human-based agentic workflow or computer-based agentic workflow. And then just to kind of contrast this a little bit more, a lot of the listeners out here are probably are somewhat familiar with RPA, like robotic process automation. And the difference I would say between like a robotic process automation and agentic AI, because I get this question a lot, is like, what is that difference? And it quite literally comes down to the fact that these AI agents are non-deterministic, right? The RPA bots are kind of brainless bots, right? And everything that they're doing has been predetermined by the developer, the programmer, or whoever that actually created that bot. And yes, they can kind of sense and respond, but for the most part, everything is predetermined, right? Again, with AI agents, nothing is kind of predetermined, right? The large language model is building this plan, and then the AI agent is going out and interacting with the real world or interacting with other systems via APIs in order to fulfill or achieve that goal.
Yeah, yeah, I totally share your thoughts on that. So, but now having this in mind, where does the integration platform as a service fit in?
Yeah, that's so you definitely hit on that, it's like, all right, that's all cool, right? And again, if you're using something like a chat GPT or even a Sora to build some amazing video, a lot of the steps or things that those large language models, commercially available large language models are doing is kind of hidden from you as a user. Like there's a lot of iterative things. There's a lot of collaboration with other built-in models, and all that you are really seeing as the end user is that front facade. And if you kind of pivot from like those publicly available ones to something that is going to work inside of your organization, your enterprise, you have to realize that, oh, all of the things that matter, all of the things that you would want to do are going to be in your IT systems, right? Your business data is there, your order history is there, your, customer list, material list, that's all there. And then anything that you want to do is going to be through those business systems as well. Well, if you are going to, take an off-the-shelf large language model and then try to have it access all of these different systems, that is a Herculean task because we've already just had enough problem getting an end-to-end business process working, kind of connecting all of these different systems. Now, if what we want to do is connect a large language model to access our data and be able to act on our behalf, the problem just explodes in complexity from just basically how do we do that? How do we secure that? How do we govern that? And again, these are all problems that an integration platform has been dealing with since integration platforms have been around, right? It's the exposing of business data. It's the exposing of business logic in secure and governed ways. It's being able to track what's going on. It's standardizing the access of all of these different systems and protocols in a very cohesive way. So when we think of like, how does an iPaaS or how does an integration platform help with AI? It's doing the things that an iPaaS or an integration platform has done all along, but doing it specifically for an AI agent instead of other business systems or humans.
Okay, so would you agree then to my summary of this statement that in the end, as a result, integration platforms in the context of agentic AIs are just the next step of bringing integration to the whole company IT landscape, as it's a very crucial key in keeping context, exposing data, exposing business process flows?
So again, I'm from the integration world, so yes, I do agree with that statement that it is the next iteration. Um, you know, having researched in this area a lot, there are definitely differing opinions on the best way to expose that business data, expose those APIs. Um, but again, coming from an integration background and just kind of seeing the parallels of what AI agent or agentic AI is going through in the 2024 to 2026 timeframe, it really reminds me of what just the internet was going through in like 2004 to 2006, where there was just this explosion of APIs that were available, the explosion of cloud-based systems that were available, and just managing all of that was really challenging. We're going to get to that same point with this agentic AI. Exposing all of this data and endpoints to all of these AI agents is going to be it's going to end up to be a management nightmare if you do not have the right tooling and the great a good baseline that you're building on top of. And an integration platform for a lot of companies out there is something that they already have. So extending that into these other working models, I think, is going to be not a wholesale change for them. It's going to be an augmentation, and one that I think is readily available to most of them.
Okay, and to avoid exactly this nightmare that we have a big mix of different integration exposed to all the different agents in the context and the landscapes, um, what kind of architectural patterns should teams prioritize to enable their IT landscapes to make use of agentic AIs in the best way?
So this is an area that is just rapidly evolving. If you had asked me, exactly 1 year ago today, the answer would have been almost completely different. Like the answer would have been, we need some standards. Exactly 1 year
Oof.
ago today, and while yes, the answer is still we need some standards. In the intervening 12 months, not only have standards been proposed. Multiple different standards have been proposed, and now the industry is also starting to consolidate in a couple of different areas when it comes to standards. So, having these standards, implementing these standards, and then exposing these standards so that tools from a variety of different vendors, because what company out there does not have solutions from a whole host of vendors, right? And even on the LLM side, right, there are a half a dozen to 10 or so different large language model vendors out there, and they all have different strengths, right? They all do things slightly differently. And, one LLM that's good for this task might not necessarily be good for another task. So, again, having these standards to kind of support the architecture is, I would say, the very first thing that we need. To answer your specific question around the architectural patterns, this is also still evolving a lot, right? I would say that there are probably two or three hallmarks of what a good architecture, or I should say components, not necessarily hallmarks, components that are going to be needed. One is going to be uh, like up to date real time data, right? And for the large language model to be able to access that, right, it needs to be stored in a vector database. And so that real time data is going to be able to help those AI agents in that planning phase, right? Whether it be, retrieving specific information about order status or customer order history or invoice status or whatever the specific query happens to be for what the agent needs to do. Accessing that information in real time is going to be very important, right? Because if that data is not real time, if it's delayed by a day, right? You might be asking it to do something that it doesn't have access to, right? Information that it doesn't have access to, and it's not going to be able to be of any help. So you need to have that real time data. Secondly, you need to have actions or things that this AI agent can do. And, as we've kind of have been talking about, thus far, those are gonna be exposed by APIs, right? And those APIs need to be, exposed in a very common way, right? We can talk a little bit about, like, what those standards are, later in this conversation, but for right now, let's just say they are all going to adhere to a common standard that the AI agents can understand. But the AI agents are a lot like you and me in that they can understand natural language. So when you have those APIs exposed, you want to have some consistency in how you're calling things, right? We have a lot of different systems inside of our IT landscape. We might have a commerce system, a sales cloud, a service cloud, our ERP, our logistics system, and they might have different field names for what in SAP we would call a material or a part number. Those types of things are a little bit challenging for us as humans. They're also a little bit challenging for AI. So what we want to do is we want to bring some consistency to that for the AI. So how do we have those APIs? How do we bring that consistency? Again, it's coming back to our good old friend integration platform. And then the last component is obviously the large language model itself. We touched on that a little bit earlier about how those large language models are going to do the planning or going to do the iteration are actually calling out to get additional data, calling out to execute these APIs, but having a agentic platform that is able to again have different or support different large language models is going to be really important as well because of the fact that, as I said earlier, not every large language model is up to all of the same different tasks. Some are going to excel in one area, some are going to excel in another area. And everybody right now is just kind of trying to find and figure out which LLMs are good at what. And what you will start to see from vendors like SAP and others is some more of a I'm not going to say standardization, but you will see some large language models that are just going to be naturally better in specific areas. We aren't really there yet, 100%. I mean, we definitely are starting to see some of that, but yeah, as this goes along, I could definitely see, in my logistics space, I want to use this AI, right, or LLM. In my HR space, I want to use this LLM, and you may have differing LLMs in the back end.
Okay, so you got my attention with one specific point, which was the real-time data. But how we can balance real-time data with reliability when integrating it into the agentic AIs?
Yeah, so that's always that's always the challenge, right? I said I was doing integration for almost 30 years at this point, and there was a time when real time was like anything that was batched like 15 minutes or more frequent than that, right? They're like, oh, if it's at least 15 minutes, the users will never know that it's not actually real time. And I'm like, that's interesting way to think of real time. But with agentic AI and the way that business moves now, the speed at which business moves now, we don't have the luxury of every 15 minutes. People as well as these AI agents expect true real time. So one of the ways that we can achieve a true real time integration mechanism, whether that be uh, you know, fulfilling data or getting data into that vector database, or just from making sure that an order that is created in my commerce system shows up in my ERP in real time, so that they both are have the same version of truth, right? The same version of reality. One of the key things that we can do there is event-driven architecture. So event-driven architecture as a concept, and I believe you were talking about this at the top, was one of the topics that was covered in this podcast earlier this year, I think. And the great thing about event-driven architecture is the same architectural patterns that you could use to integrate your business process and connect your systems and integrate your business systems uh, can also now feed that real-time vector database. So if you are already capturing the fact that an order was created or changed or material was created or an employee was hired, right? There's no reason to say that linking that in for that business process, that you have another subscriber which is going to be that vector database, right? And that vector database will get the subscription of that business event or that data event, persist, obviously run it through the vector tokenizing process. But then when it persists that information, now the commerce system, the ERP, and this vector database that the large language model is accessing, they all have the same immediate version of truth.
Yeah, cool. And as you've already mentioned vector engines a couple of times, we also had an episode last year on the vector engine of HANA Cloud. So if you haven't listened into that, feel free to make this after our episode today. So we're already very deep in the topics. Let's refresh the minds of our listeners a bit. And we typically do not have so frequently recurring guests here in the podcast. So I want to know you a bit more, and I would ask you for three different things about you as a person. And I typically prepare these kind of questions for me, but they are always spontaneous for my guests. But as you were talking about the different LLMs and the different results, I decided to strike out one of my questions and asking you, what is your favorite LLM these days?
Oh, what is so at SAP, we have an internal AI playground. Nicholas, I'm sure you've played around with this, and
Yeah,
the
every day.
default the default LLM for there is Mistral. So that's the one that I use the most for sure. Um, but I also have the Chat GPT 5 model as well. And I love coming up with the fact that it's multimodal now, the ChatGPT stuff, I think is really fun. So I have a lot of fun just kind of playing with that. In fact, I just made a Spotify playlist, and I spent, I don't know, too long, maybe 10 minutes or so I wanted to come up with some really innovative, fun art for the
Ah, I see.
Spotify playlist. So I was just sitting there typing along, and so yeah, anything that is multimodal, I think is just super fun right now.
Yeah, cool. Um, for me personally, I have the feeling in my private tasks that Copilot, even though it has the same model grounding as ChatGPT itself, it delivers better results for me personally. But
Hmm.
yeah,
So that is actually of I would say all of them. I don't know if I've actually really ever played around with the Copilot AI as anything, as like a we'll say an office helper. So, maybe I need to do that, and play around there a little bit more.
yeah,
We'll have to share notes after the pod.
uh, exactly. So then, second question: what's your most favorite drink?
Oh, most favorite drink. That is oh, man, I could go on. I could wax poetic, about drinks. That's, another area. So, at the beginning of COVID, a lot of people were, trying different things. There were so many people that were doing sourdough. I don't, at least that was big in the States. I don't know if it was big in Germany or elsewhere in the world.
It was. Yeah.
But, there were a lot of people that were making sourdough. I personally got into mixology. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos on how to make drinks. I built out my bar, and I started making all sorts of drinks, and now, after doing all of that and trying all of these, like, super complex cocktails, my favorite drink is, an old-fashioned, but it is made with rum instead of, bourbon or whiskey, so, it's like, 2 ounces of Apple and Estate 5-year, some bitters, and then some Demerara sugar. There you go. That's my favorite drink.
Cool, cool. And I believe you then already saw the Mixologist the series on Netflix.
Yes, yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. And then last question, what's your favorite style of music?
My favorite style of music. So I'm really big into, punk and ska. So, um, I was back in my university days, right around the same time that I was, breaking into the SAP ecosystem, I was also in a ska band. So I played trombone in a ska band. We were called the Pin Setters. We never really played outside of my little college town, but, we had a lot of fun. We played really loud. We played really fast. I don't think we played really well, but, we did have a whole lot of fun. So, punk and ska still really, key to, my heart or and, something that I still listen to a lot these days.
Cool. Is there any recording out there from your band in the back in the days?
You know, if there is, yeah, we might not wanna be listening to it. But,
Okay,
if
okay,
it
I
listen,
see.
if you are a big punk and ska fan and you, don't mind listening to out of tune, ska music from the, mid to late '90s, drop me a note. I'm sure I can rustle up a copy for you.
Cool, cool. Okay, so then let's get back into our today's episode's topic. So, I mean, when having agentic AI in place and having it integrated into more or less all our business data, all our business processes, our whole context through also having vector engines involved and so on and so forth, then some people might have some kind of fear that the agentic AI may take over the control or that it maybe is getting out of the guardrails we want to design. So, what kind of actions we can take on to ensure that the agentic AI keep inside the rails, following our guidelines on a day to day, also within a team collaboration. And last but not least, that we stay in control, the people, the humans stay in control.
So there are a couple of different facets there on what is going on from a safety perspective. The first thing I do want to say is, we've been talking about agentic AI as these AI agents that are going to either act on behalf of humans or maybe even act spontaneously on their own. And I do want the listeners to understand that the current state of the art, right? So, we talked about ChatGPT, we talked about Copilot, at SAP, we have Joule, right? And that is, and there are agents that can plug in and be invoked by all of those different AI platforms as well as others. And that is kind of where the actual state of the art is right now, right? Everything is uh for the most part, being invoked by a human, right, and controlled by a human, and the true autonomy that is kind of the vision is not really reality in the world. There's definitely programmers, developers that are working on this. There are definitely some research projects. There are some pilots going on. But if we are talking about true autonomy of agents, just kind of executing a process or doing things completely on their own, in outs with no observability from humans, that is definitely not happening at large scale. Um, so the very first thing that we kinda have to fall back on is the fact that, yes, right now, a lot of the AI agents that we have are still being, closely monitored or controlled by humans through the chat interface, right? And then when it comes down to it, there are really kind of two aspects or two layers of we'll say security or governance, right? One is inside of the large language model, and this is where we kind of have to delegate a little bit of control to both the large language model providers, right, as well as the teams inside of our own organizations that might be doing some grounding and fine tuning on those large language models as they expose those to our end user base, right? So that's going to be a significant component to the safety concerns and the guardrails that we have around agentic AI, and one that, quite frankly, integration doesn't really have a huge role on. The other one, though, however, integration is an enormous component for, or an integration platform should be an enormous component for, and that is on the actual execution, right? Whether it be accessing data, right, and does the human that is invoking this AI agent have access to read this information, right? Or does the AI agent just have carte blanche access to all the information? By the way, terrible. Don't ever really allow that, right? We all, since right now all of the AI agents are working on behalf of a human user, what we want is to ensure that that agent is not doing anything that the human user can't do. So again, this is a very common problem in the API world, right? So this is where API management really kind of had its start, right? It's ensuring a governed access via the application of API policies to ensure that the people are accessing the right resources and not accessing resources that they shouldn't. And then the other thing, so that's like on the read side, but also then on the execution side, we want to have the AI agent being able to execute on the behalf of a human user. So again, it's that concept of principal propagation and how we get that identity from the human user through the AI agent into the APIs that are being called. And this is actually an area that is under active development in the we'll say the AI agent ecosystem. Some of the companies that are building and collaborating on these standards that are making this happen. This is some of the areas that they're actively working on right now, so that we can have not only better governance, right, and having that principal propagation, but then also we can log that, right, and see what actually is happening, and then have that visibility into what these AI agents are doing on our behalf.
So then we can summarize it that for now we're safe.
Yeah, well, we're not 100% safe, right? So we still need to be vigilant. We still need to make sure that we're planning ahead because, like I said, a lot of the stuff is still actively being developed. For example, you may have a backend API that is only secured via SAML, right? And the standard right now predominantly is based on OAuth in the agentic AI world when it comes to identity propagation. So you may actually need to wrapper that SAML backend API with some OAuth in your API layer. But again, this is constantly being evolving. So it's planning ahead. It's keeping up with what is actively being worked on and being released by your technology providers, and it's making sure that you're never going to be unsecure.
Very nice. Okay. So now we talked a little bit on that governance topic. Let's get into a bit more real world. So, do you have any kind of day in the life example for a combination of integration with agents and also for our audience, what kind of practical starting point you would recommend for the next quarter in this direction?
So on the practical examples, one of the things that we are working on at SAP is some Joule agents that are helping negotiate the purchase price from your suppliers, and we have a lot of built-in capabilities to access the supplier via Ariba, looking at the purchase history that happens to be in S4. Um, but if you happen to have a purchasing platform that is not Ariba, maybe you're doing B2B purchasing, perhaps you have a vast supply chain, multitude of different divisions, and some of those divisions might be on other ERPs, right? Um, so for more complex scenarios like that, where you might have different, source data, right? Trying to feed this vector database that's going to help us answer those questions. You might have different systems that you need to actually work through from a procurement system. Maybe you have logistics systems. Those are some practical examples of what we're seeing in the real world. Yes, we have Joule agents that, if you are predominantly on that SAP ecosystem, are for the most part going to be relatively plug and play. Nothing is entirely plug and play here, but getting that up to speed, we have a lot of those connection points already built for you in Joule. But if you do have a much more complex landscape, you still can achieve those exact same outcomes, right? It just might take a little bit more work for you to access that information in real time, access the multitude of backend systems via AI agents. So, those are going to be some of those practical examples that you we can apply with agentic AI and an iPaaS. And then as for how do we stay up to date? So there's a lot of information out there, but it's kind of scattered all over the place. So one of the things that I have done is, I have a bunch of bookmarks in my browser, and it's like the model context protocol API, right? There's some Git repositories that I have. And I periodically go out and look for that. I also have a bunch of different search alerts on model context protocol, or MCP, on A to A, the agent to agent protocol, because there's constantly more blogs, more information, more research papers that are even coming out for all of that are covering all of this information, and it really is almost a full time job to keep up with that. I wish I could create an AI agent that could monitor all that stuff and just kind of inject it directly into my brain, but maybe I'll work on that one next.
Maybe that would be the next big integration after integrating SAP to a toaster,
There you
right?
go.
Maybe a cool project. Yeah. But you mentioned MCP, and I mean we're directly after TechEd, and we had an awesome announcement coming to MCP and Integration Suite. Do you want to touch on that shortly?
Yeah, sure. So, at TechEd, we just announced that we were going to have an MCP server, a Model Context Protocol server, that's going to be part of the SAP Integration Suite. It is actually going to be a component tightly integrated with our API management component that is part of SAP Integration Suite. And MCP and API management, and then also the graph capability of SAP Integration Suite, they all kind of work hand in hand because just like APIs are the standardization of accessing business logic, the MCP, or Model Context Protocol, is just the standardization of exposing APIs specifically to agents, right? And those APIs, again, could be kind of like read APIs. They could be, accessing files or data streams, or the protocol is relatively flexible on what you can expose and how you can expose that. But at the end of the day, it's really just so that all of these large language models from any number of different providers are able to find these resources, right? So part of the MCP protocol is discoverability of the resources, and then being able to interact with those resources as well. And having this as part of integration suite is great. So as you are exposing an API, just like you would for a human developer, there's actually an additional checkbox that you can check, and then add additional context or information specifically for that AI agent, so that the AI agent understands that API a little bit more. Think about it like a documentation, but specifically for an AI agent. So maybe it doesn't have to look the prettiest, but the text does need to be there, and the text does need to be very descriptive. So that's a really cool component that we're bringing, and that also links with the graph capability of SAP Integration Suite and the API management capability. So if you're not familiar with the graph capability, it is the way that you could to expose APIs from a multitude of different backends. So if you think of like a end-to-end business process of like order to cash or quote to cash or something like that, where let's say it's an e-commerce scenario, right? You have your e-commerce platform where the order is created. It needs to be fulfilled. So the order also exists in the ERP system, and then you have a logistics execution system or warehouse management system that also needs a copy of that information. For the AI agent to understand how all of those pieces fit together, it might have to go to 3 different systems: the commerce system, the ERP, the logistics system. That's really hard for a human to do. It's also really hard for an AI agent to do. So what Graph does is it combines all 3 of those different back-end systems through a single pane of glass that, again, can be accessed by human developers and human API consumers or AI agents. And the other valuable thing that Graph does is it has what's like cross-system association, right? So you could say, "Hey, I want to look into my commerce system," right? And we'll see all the orders that were placed by this particular customer, right? And we could see the billing status from the ERP. We could see the fulfillment status that's coming from the logistics system, and all of that could be exposed as a single API. Again, greatly reducing the complexity that the AI agent needs to deal with, and greatly speeding up the usefulness that AI agent is able to deliver.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for this small deep dive in this direction.
Yes,
And
yes.
for sure, for our audience, if you did not follow to the SAP Tech Hut, ensure to check out the news guide or watch some on-demand sessions online. But yeah, so I mean, we now heavily talked about what kind of benefits it has using an integration platform, in our case, obviously integration suite as part of BTP in combination with agentic AI. But from your point of view and from your opinion, are there also cases where teams should build connections themselves versus implementing or you start using a whole entire integration platform?
Oh, that is a really interesting question. So in short, yeah, I would actually say almost any time that you're going to be starting down this path of agentic AI or trying any of this stuff out I would say like in a development context, in a pilot context, I would actually say the application, a lot of these concepts are going to be they're just gonna slow that entire process down, especially if what we wanna do is iterate quickly, fail fast, and kind of find our path forward. But I would say, like, the implementation and the application of an iPaaS in the context of AI needs to be there when you start to, you know, uh, go broad, right? When you start to roll this out to the masses, so to speak, definitely are going to need to have the visibility that the iPaaS gives. You're definitely going to need to have the governance that the iPaaS brings. You're definitely going to want to and benefit from the transformation capabilities that iPaaS brings. So, to start, yeah, that might be a lot of overhead, but you definitely want to apply this before you kind of roll out, uh, we'll say, cross-system AI agents, um, just because we do not want to be replicating the sins of the past, right? Earlier in their conversation, I was talking about how this period of time reminds me of like the mid 2000s, like the 2004, 2006 timeframe. And at that time, there was this explosion of APIs, and everybody was calling all these different APIs, but no one knew who was calling all these other different APIs, and it was kind of a management and maintenance nightmare. And that's kind of was where you saw a lot of these iPaaS systems kind of spring up, is to lend some of that governance, lend some of that control, lend some of that reusability. And we're again kind of in that position right now. I will be the first to say that the tooling is in a state of evolution. It is definitely not 100% mature across the board. There's going to be some areas where the tooling is more mature than others. There's going to be some areas where the standard isn't even really mature. So there is an evolution process. So you definitely don't want to roll out, I would say, some business critical capabilities, leveraging some of this stuff right now. But you definitely need to be playing around with this, because this area is evolving so fast, and we're seeing some great benefits coming out of this that you don't want to be caught on the back foot.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your point of view on that. And I mean, in best case, the customers anyhow already implemented an integration platform for their other use cases, and now they can just add the agentic AI topic on top of it.
We hope that they've implemented an iPaaS. If you haven't, it's not too late to start now, right? Because building that business case for the iPaaS is now not just about connecting my business systems and having an end-to-end business process that operates better. It's also getting you ready for the future. So it's kind of like, you know, uh, you know, getting ready for the our AI future is going to be really component or a key component of that iPaaS business case.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, when talking about integration, we need to talk about APIs, and we've done that a lot today. And of course, things like integration flows, and especially in case of integration suite, we also have open connectors. So basically, the APIs to all the third party systems and so on and so forth. So based down, it's some kind of very technical topic, reading API specifications and integrating all of this together. So how our customers and then also we can ensure when working with these technical APIs in context of agents, how we can ensure do not getting buried under all this technical metadata and metrics, and what is the simple path to grow confidence over the time from your point of view?
So there's definitely a lot of complexity right now. And what a lot of these tools, specifically on the in the integration platform side, is hopefully going to be shielding from some of that complexity. One of the very first things that you can do to kind of shield from a lot of that complexity is, and this is kind of talking about that model context protocol again, is only exposing the necessary APIs that need to be exposed. And then even when you're exposing just those necessary APIs, making those APIs as simple as possible for the AI agent to understand. This is going to be for a couple of different reasons, right? So, SAP APIs are notoriously verbose, right? Have lots of different fields, and a lot of those fields are not maybe not applicable to the way that you are doing business. Um, it's confusing for humans. It's also confusing for AI agents. So what we want to do is we got to filter all of those out, right? So that we are retrieving and returning to the AI agent only the information that is going to be relevant for the task that AI agent is trying to accomplish. And what you may end up with is a single, piece of data, conceptual data. Think of like an order, right? That may have to be exposed in different ways to different AI agents, right? Because those agents might be doing different things. One may be looking at, the efficient routing of how we ship these orders, right? One may be looking at or needing the order history or looking at invoicing information. Um, so, depending on what that AI agent needs access to, we want to expose just that information. so we don't confuse the AI, we don't fill up its context window, right? So we want to make sure that the AI agent only has that relative, the relevant information. So that's definitely one of the things that you can do to kind of help allay that complexity. And then the other would be make sure that the APIs are performant, right? Um, we've talked a little bit about how these agentic workflows iterate, right? And they collaborate. Well, that iteration might be calling a handful of different APIs or maybe even the same API multiple times. And 500 milliseconds here, 500 milliseconds there. It might add up, right? And you're adding seconds and seconds and seconds. And again, that can kind of snowball and compound, and not only make the task challenging for the API agent to fulfill, but it's also going to cause a worse experience for the end user that's interacting with that agent.
Yeah. Okay. So we're already approaching the end of the episode. So time flies by. And at the end of the episodes, we always ask our guests for any kind of recommendation. So it can be work related or your favorite topic integration related thing, or it can be also a thing which is more related to your private interests. Things like a book, a movie, a series, your personal most favorite song, whatever you want to share, and the people should check out after this podcast.
Sure. So, you asked me what my favorite type of music is. I said it was punk and ska. And if you're a person of my age, one of the seminal, uh, record labels of that late '90s, early 2000s, punk and ska scene was called Asian Man Records. And the person who ran Asian Man Records, his name is Mike Park. He was the founding member of the band Skink and Pickle. If you happen to be a Skink and Pickle fan, my hat's off to you. But there's a brand new book that's coming out. It's called Elvis is Dead. I'm Still Alive. It's the story of Asian Man Records. And it's not out yet. I've read a couple of excerpts from it, and it's amazing. It really encapsulates some of my favorite aspects of the punk and ska movement, which is that DIY aspect, right? And not to just bring everything back to agentic AI, but a lot of the things that are happening in the agentic AI space right now is kind of born off of that DIY ethic, right? It's rolling up your sleeves, it's using the tools, it's trying to figure out how all these pieces fit together. And whether, again, you're doing with AI agents, or you are doing a CD mail order company, and trying to sign bands and make records, just I've always been energized by people who, don't ask questions, don't make excuses, just charge forward and make things happen. So Mike Park and Asian Man Records did that, and hopefully the listeners are doing that with agentic AI after listening to this episode.
Yeah, thank you for this very perfect closing words, Crack. So, and also, of course, a big thank you for joining me in today's episode. So, it was a pleasure for me having you in here. And yeah, thanks for taking the time.
Yeah,
And of
thank
course,
you, Nicholas.
for sure, yeah. And of course, for our listeners, make sure to also check the LinkedIn profile from Craig, follow him, and don't miss the chance to keep track on the development on integration platforms for the future. And I would be very happy if you join us in one of our other episodes again. So I'm Niklas Siemer, recording here in the headquarters from SAP in Waldorf, Germany. And yeah, see you in one of the next episodes. Thanks and bye bye.